The Gulf of Mexico is a different beast at night. The sky is a bruised purple, streaked with clouds that seem to pulse with the storm's energy. The air is thick with salt and the metallic tang of rain, and the wind howls like a wounded animal. I'm standing on the deck of the USS Marlin, a U.S. Navy vessel that's seen better days. Its gray hull is streaked with rust, and the American flag whips violently in the gale. I don't know why they sent a Navy ship for us. Normally, we'd be ferried back to shore by a supply vessel, or if the weather was bad enough, a Coast Guard cutter. But tonight it's the Marlin, and I'm one of the 5. They call me Mac. I've been working on oil rigs in the Gulf for the better part of a decade, 1 month on, 1 month off. The work's tough, but it pays well, and there's a strange kind of camaraderie out here. You learn to live with the isolation, the boredom, the sudden bursts of panic when something goes wrong. We get satellite internet on the good days, but it's spotty at best. Most of the time we're cut off from the world, just us and the endless stretch of water. But there's always been something off about this rig. Every shift, 5 days before the end, 5 workers are chosen. They're told to pack their things, and by nightfall they're gone. Transferred, they say, but no one ever says where. And the ones who leave, they never come back. I've asked around, but no one seems to know, or no one's willing to talk. Tonight it's my turn. The storm is too fierce for a helicopter, so the Marlin has pulled up alongside the rig. The waves crash against its hull, sending spray high into the air. I'm standing in line with the other 4, waiting to board. My jacket is soaked through, and the wind cuts through me like a knife. I don't know why we're leaving tonight, why it's so urgent. But I don't have a choice. 5 are always chosen. Always. We're ushered onto the ship, out of the rain and into its cold metal belly. The corridors are narrow and dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of oil and seawater. We're led to a small room where 2 men are waiting for us. One is scruffy with a beard that looks like it hasn't been trimmed in months. I've seen him on the rig before, but he's not a regular. The other is clean-cut, wearing a Navy officer's uniform. His name tag reads Commander Hayes. He's got the kind of face that's hard to read. Calm, but with a sharpness in his eyes that makes me uneasy. The scruffy man hands out forms while Hayes steps forward. "Gentlemen," he says, his voice steady but commanding. "I'm Commander Hayes, and I'll be overseeing this operation. The forms before you are non-disclosure agreements. Signing them means you agree not to discuss anything you see or do from this point forward. Not with your families, not with your coworkers, not with anyone. If you refuse, you'll be returned to the rig and finish your shift there. If you accept, you'll be briefed further once we're underway. Understood?" The room is silent. No one moves. No one speaks. Hayes nods. "Good. Take a few minutes to review the documents. If you have questions, now's the time." I glance down at the form in my hands. The language is dense, full of legal jargon, but the gist is clear. We're being pulled into something classified. Something big. I look around at the others. Most of them are already signing. I don't recognize any of them, just faces I've seen in passing on the rig. But there's a tension in the room, a kind of quiet dread that's hard to ignore. I sign the form. What choice do I have? Hayes collects the papers, then nods to the scruffy man, who steps forward. "All right, gentlemen," he says. "Follow me." We're led deeper into the ship, through a maze of corridors and stairwells. The Marlin groans and creaks as it plows through the waves, the storm still raging outside. Finally, we reach a large room filled with monitors and control panels. The scruffy man gestures for us to sit. "This is where you'll be working," he says. "Your job is to monitor these systems and keep them running. If anything goes wrong, you report it immediately. Understood?" We nod, but no one speaks. The scruffy man glances at Hayes, who steps forward. "There's something you need to know," Hayes says, his voice low. "The rig you're being transferred to isn't like the one you're used to. It's a classified facility, and its purpose is strictly need to know. Your job is to maintain the equipment and keep things running smoothly. That's all you need to worry about. Any questions?" I raise my hand. "What happens if we refuse?" Hayes's expression doesn't change. You'll be confined to quarters for the duration of the operation, but I wouldn't recommend it. The pay for this assignment is significant. I glance at the others. They're all staring at Hayes, their faces pale. No one else asks any questions. Good, Hayes says. We'll be arriving at the facility shortly. Get some rest while you can. We're shown to a cramped bunk room where we're each assigned a cot. I lie down, but I can't sleep. My mind is racing, trying to piece together what's happening. Why the secrecy? Why the Navy? And what the hell is on that rig? Hours later, the ship slows, and we're called back to the control room. The storm has eased, but the sky is still dark, the air thick with tension. Hayes leads us to the deck where a massive structure looms out of the mist. It's not like any rig I've ever seen. It's bigger, more industrial, with a kind of grim utilitarian look to it. Searchlights sweep across its surface, and I can see soldiers patrolling the platforms. We're transferred to the rig via a narrow gangway, the waves crashing beneath us. The moment my boots hit the metal deck, I feel it. A deep, resonant hum that seems to come from the structure itself. It's not just the sound of machinery, it's something else, something I can't quite place. Hayes leads us inside, through a series of corridors and stairwells. The place is a maze, filled with pipes and wires and the constant hum of engines. Finally, we reach a large control room, where a team of technicians is monitoring a bank of screens. This is your station, Hayes says. Your job is to keep these systems running. If anything goes wrong, you report it immediately. Understood? We nod, but no one speaks. Hayes glances at the scruffy man who steps forward. I'll be overseeing your work, he says. If you have any questions, ask me. But remember, this is a need-to-know operation. Don't ask questions you don't need answers to. I take my place at one of the consoles, my hands trembling slightly as I adjust the controls. The screens in front of me display a series of graphs and readings, most of which I don't understand. But there's one screen that catches my eye. It shows a live feed of the rig's underside, where a massive chain disappears into the water. The links are enormous, each one the size of a car, and they're moving. I glance at the scruffy man. What's that? I ask, pointing to the screen. He doesn't answer right away. He just stares at the screen, his face pale. Finally, he says, "That's not your concern. Just keep the systems running." I want to press him, but I don't. Instead, I focus on the console, trying to make sense of the readings. But my mind keeps drifting back to the chain. What's it connected to? And why is it moving? The hours drag on, each one heavier than the last. The rig hums with a low, constant vibration, like the growl of a sleeping beast. I'm stationed at the console, my eyes glued to the screens, my hands trembling as I adjust the controls. The chain is still, but I can't shake the image of that creature, its massive glowing eye, its scales glistening in the storm's light. The others are quiet, their faces pale, their movements stiff. No one speaks. The only sound is the occasional beep of a console or the distant clang of metal. The scruffy man, I've learned his name is Grady, paces the room, his eyes darting from screen to screen. He's clearly on edge, his hands twitching at his sides. Every now and then he glances at me, his expression unreadable. I want to ask him what's going on, what that thing is, why it's chained to the rig, but I don't. I just keep my head down and focus on the console. The radio crackles to life and I jump, nearly knocking over a cup of coffee. "Mac," Hayes' voice comes through, sharp and urgent. "We need you on the lower platform. Now." I don't argue. I grab my jacket and head for the door, the others watching me with wide, fearful eyes. Grady follows me out, his footsteps heavy on the metal stairs. The lower platform is a maze of pipes and valves, the air thick with the smell of oil and seawater. The storm has picked up again, the wind howling through the rig's skeleton. Hayes is waiting for me, his face grim. "We've got a problem," he says, gesturing to a massive hydraulic pump. "The pressure's spiking. If it blows, we're in trouble." I nod, my hands already moving to adjust the controls. The pump is old, its surface streaked with rust, but it's still functional. Barely. I can feel the vibrations in my hands as I work, the pressure gauge flickering dangerously close to the red zone. "What's causing the spike?" I ask, my voice barely audible over the wind. Hayes doesn't answer. He just looks at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. And then I hear it. A low guttural sound, like the growl of some enormous beast. It's coming from below the rig, deep beneath the surface of the water. The sound reverberates through the metal structure, vibrating in my chest. I look over at Hayes, and his face is pale, his eyes wide with terror. "What the hell is that?" I whisper, my voice barely audible over the storm. Hayes doesn't answer. He just shakes his head, his hand tightening on the radio. And then the rig lurches again, harder this time. I'm thrown to the ground, my hard hat rolling away. The chain starts moving again, but this time it's not being pulled down, it's being pushed up. The gears scream in protest as the chain begins to rise, link by massive link, out of the depths. I scramble to my feet, my heart pounding in my chest. Hayes is shouting something, but I can't hear him over the noise. I stumble toward the edge of the platform, my eyes fixed on the chain. It's rising faster now, the links clanging together as they're dragged upward. And then I see it. Something is moving beneath the surface of the water. Something massive. The waves churn and froth, the sea itself seeming to boil as the thing rises. My breath catches in my throat as a shadow emerges from the depths, darker than the night, larger than anything I've ever seen. The chain is attached to it. I can't see the creature clearly, just glimpses of its form as it breaks the surface. A massive scaled body glistening in the rain. A row of spines, each one the size of a tree. And then as it rises higher, I see its eye. A single enormous eye glowing with an unnatural light. It's like staring into the abyss, a void that seems to swallow everything around it. The eye locks onto me, and I feel a wave of pure primal terror wash over me. My legs give out, and I collapse to the ground, unable to look away. The creature lets out a roar, a sound so deep and powerful that it shakes the rig to its core. The soldiers are shouting, their voices panicked and desperate. I hear the crack of gunfire, but it's useless. The bullets bounce harmlessly off the creature's scales. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, the creature sinks back into the depths. The chain goes slack, the rig stabilizing once more. The storm rages on, but the creature is gone, leaving only the memory of its eye burned into my mind. I sit there trembling as the soldiers rush around me. Hayes appears, his face grim. He grabs me by the shoulder, pulling me to my feet. "You did good, Mac," he says, his voice low. "But this isn't over. Not by a long shot." I want to ask him what the hell that thing was, why it's chained to the rig, what they're planning to do with it. But I don't. I just nod, my mind still reeling from what I've just seen. He hands me a radio. "Stay on this channel. If that thing moves again, I need to know." I take the radio, my hands still shaking. Hayes gives me one last look, then turns and walks away, barking orders at the soldiers. I'm left alone on the platform, the rain soaking through my clothes, the storm raging around me. I look down at the chain, now still and silent, and I can't help but wonder what other horrors are lurking beneath the surface. And I realize, with a sinking feeling in my gut, that I may have just signed my own death warrant. The hours blur together as I work to keep the hydraulics stable. The storm shows no signs of letting up, and the rig groans and shudders with every gust of wind. The soldiers patrol the platforms, their faces tense and drawn. No one speaks about what we saw. No one dares. I'm exhausted, my hands raw and trembling, but I can't stop. Every time I close my eyes, I see that massive glowing eye staring back at me. I hear the creature's roar, feel the vibrations in my chest. I can't shake the feeling that it's still out there, watching, waiting. The radio crackles to life, and I jump, nearly dropping it. "Mac," Hayes' voice comes through, sharp and urgent. "We need you in the control room. Now." I don't ask questions, I just go. The control room is a chaotic mess of screens and controls, filled with soldiers and technicians. Hayes stands in the center, his arms crossed, his face grim. He nods to me as I enter. "We've got a problem," he says, gesturing to one of the screens. I step closer, my heart sinking as I see what's on the display. The chain is moving again, but this time it's not just rising. It's twisting, writhing, as if something is fighting against it. The pressure gauges are spiking, the hydraulic system struggling to keep up. "What's happening?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Hayes doesn't answer. He just looks at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. And then the screen goes black. The lights flicker and the control room is plunged into darkness. The soldiers shout, their voices panicked, and I hear the sound of equipment crashing to the floor. I stumble backward, my heart pounding in my chest. And then, from somewhere deep below us, I hear it. The growl. It's louder this time, more menacing. The sound reverberates through the rig, shaking the walls and floor. I can feel it in my teeth, in my bones. The lights flicker back on, and I see Hayes' face, pale and drawn. "We need to get out of here," he says, his voice low and urgent. "Now." I don't argue. I follow him as he leads the way out of the control room, the soldiers close behind. The rig is shaking violently now, the chain groaning and screeching as it twists and turns. I can hear the sound of metal straining, of bolts popping and gears grinding. We're almost to the platform when it happens. The chain snaps. The sound is deafening, a metallic scream that echoes through the rig. I'm thrown to the ground, my ears ringing, my vision blurred. I look up just in time to see the chain whip through the air, the massive links crashing into the platform. And then from the depths below, the creature rises. It's bigger than I could have imagined, its massive body breaking the surface of the water with a roar that shakes the very foundations of the rig. Its scales glisten in the rain, its spines cutting through the darkness like knives. And its eye, that massive glowing eye, fixes on us with a malevolent intensity. Hayes grabs my arm, pulling me to my feet. "Run," he shouts, his voice barely audible over the creature's roar. I don't need to be told twice. I run, my heart pounding in my chest, my legs trembling with every step. The soldiers are shouting, their voices panicked and desperate, but I don't stop. I can't stop. The creature lets out another roar, and I feel the rig shudder beneath my feet. I glance back just in time to see it lunge forward, its massive body crashing into the platform. The metal groans and twists, the structure buckling under the force. And then, with a final deafening crash, the rig collapses. I'm thrown into the air, the world spinning around me. I hit the water with a force that knocks the breath from my lungs, the cold seeping into my bones. I struggle to the surface, gasping for air, my eyes scanning the chaos around me. The rig is gone, swallowed by the sea. The creature is gone too, its massive form disappearing beneath the waves. All that's left is the sound of the storm, the waves crashing around me, and the distant cries of the soldiers. I tread water, my mind reeling, my body numb with cold and shock. And then, as the waves pull me under, I realize the truth. This was never about the rig. It was about the creature. And now it's free. The storm rages on, the waves crashing around me as I struggle to stay afloat. The cold is unbearable, my limbs heavy and unresponsive. I can hear the distant sound of a helicopter, its searchlight cutting through the darkness. But it's too far away. I'm too far away. And then, as the waves pull me under for what feels like the last time, I see it. The eye. It's there beneath the surface, glowing with an unnatural light. It's watching me, waiting for me. And as the darkness closes in, I realize that I was never meant to survive this. None of us were. The storm passes, the sea calm once more. The rig is gone, swallowed by the depths. The creature is gone too, its massive form disappearing into the abyss. But somewhere deep beneath the surface, the chain lies broken, and the creature waits. For now it's free, but for how long?